About us, PaperSave is a document management software natively integrated inside of Blackbaud. We've been in this Blackbaud space for over 25 years. So a lot of what you see has that Blackbaud look and feel, right? And we do that to provide clients with a software that feels comfortable and familiar to them, right? So we have that native integration inside of the application. One of our really interesting functions here is our abilities to index documents, right? So not only can we store documents to actions, appeals, campaigns, constituents, events, gifts, funds, and opportunities, but we're also able to tag those documents with relevant information that is actually searchable information for us, right? So not only can we help you with the document management side of the house, but we also can make things a lot easier for you so that you can search these documents, making sure you're tagging them with relevant information. Now, we have been on the top of Blackbaud's recommended partnership for quite a while. So that's ultimately what you see here, right? Trusted by thousands. And what we're going to talk about in depth now is the gift processing side of the house, right? So how PaperSave can help you with the processing of your gifts. Now, this is something that is new and exciting to our application, which is the ability to help you create constituents. So not only can we help you build badges inside of RE, but now we're also able to help you onboard new constituents right from within the application, right? So as you're processing batches, we can also now help you do the data entry for new constituents. Ultimately, you don't have to leave the ecosystem. You can build your batches, manage your constituents in the sense of adding new constituents, updating their addresses right from within PaperSave. And we're actually going to see that here in real time in just a second. Many different ways to capture those documents, right? Whether you're scanning them, electronic submissions, right? If in case you're using lockbox providers, right? We can attach files or even monitor emails, right? So we can always have network scanners send files into an email. We can grab those documents right from within an email and put those into the system for you automatically. Redaction. This is an important one to make sure that your organization and your constituents' information is kept safe. PaperSave does have the capability of redacting information right off of these contributions, right? And this is something that once it's redacted is permanent, but this also makes sure that your constituent information and your organization is being kept safe. Back to our searchabilities, right? So we have two ways of searching documents from within the system: simple and advanced, right? Simple just means that you're going to give me one value. We're going to search for that one value everywhere in the system to match. So you can give me a constituent name, you can give me a check number, you can give me a fund ID, for example. PaperSave will grab that information, go back into the database, look for all of that information or all the documentation that matches that criteria, right? Now, advanced search allows us to build queries inside of PaperSave to look for documents with a little bit more of an intent, right? You can use all of that metadata that PaperSave is capturing for you and build yourself a query using that metadata and return documents right out of our systems so that you can get, again, pretty quick accessibility to all of that data. Now, workflows, that is what we use to get those batches created inside of the environment, right? Inside of RE, inside of your CRM. The whole vision within our workflows is this, right? All contributions flow through PaperSave going forward, right? So it's a little bit of turning that process a little bit backwards because you're accustomed to entering a line item inside of the application and possibly storing a document to that line item and moving on to the next as you're building your batch, right? So with a PaperSave workflow, the vision here is that you're going to have all of those contributions flow through our PaperSave workflows. First, we're going to use our OCR capabilities, right, which is our optical character recognition. We're going to use that to read information right off of these documents to help you build the batch, right? Once PaperSave builds that batch for you, we're going to present that batch to a gift processor. They have the opportunity to validate, make any changes if they need to, but ultimately that batch should already be coded from our side, and users just have to validate, click a button if that batch looks good, and we actually do the data entry for you inside of the application, right? So ultimately, that is what you'll see now in real time. So if you've never seen PaperSave before, you are seeing our welcome page, right? So any client that onboards PaperSave, they get a site just like this, gives them access to anything and everything that is PaperSave related, right? We talked about searches, right? That is your search options there. You also have your workflows, right? So you get your workflow accessibility there, right? Now, I will say I am an administrator, so I get access to everything and everything, but we are very user specific, right? So it's depending on what you want your users to do inside of the environment, what they will have access inside of PaperSave, right? So right from within our homepage here, click on workflows, takes us to our batch processing, right? So this is normally what a gift processor is going to be in when it's time for them to review one of those batches that PaperSave builds for them, right? Now we'll talk about everything that you see here in greater detail, but the process starts with how we get those documents into the system in the first place, right? We have the capabilities of supporting local scanners. Our only requirement there is we require Twain drivers so that we can make a plug and play connection to those local scanners, right? But you can feed that local scanner with all of your contributions, click on scan now, and those documents will go right into the workflow so that our OCR can start building that batch for you, right? Also note that that local scanner can be used inside of Blackbaud. If you want to add a document to any of those record types that we support, you can leverage that local scanner to do so as well. Check scanners are supported, not something that a lot of our clients use just because check scanners can only accept checks. Most of our clients like to add checks plus an envelope plus reply devices or whatever that case may be, right? So a check scanner only supports checks. If that is only the type of documents that you're wanting to create batches based off of, then that will be great. We can use that for you. But if not, then a local scanner or even a network scanner would be a good idea to use to bring in all of that documentation plus the supporting documents to those contributions, right? Now, PaperSave can use a network scanner in a couple of ways. One, we can actually have a network scanner send files into a folder structure somewhere, right? That will allow you to select all of those files and you can literally drag them into the system, drop them in the system, and PaperSave will start processing those for you, right? You also have the capabilities of clicking select and navigating to that directory and selecting those files that you want to bring in into the system. From a network scanner standpoint, we do also have the capabilities of having those files sent to an email, right? PaperSave also does monitor emails. So a file could be sent with a bunch of different contributions in there, a PDF, right into an email. PaperSave can grab that right from within that email, and we can put that right into PaperSave for you. We will separate that stack and then also OCR and build that batch for you, right? So you can always leverage a network scanner. Worth mentioning, some clients like to use lockbox providers, and we have worked with lockbox providers before. Some lockbox providers have the capabilities of sending those files directly into PaperSave, either because we can monitor an email, for example, or we are a web-driven application and we are able to use our APIs to ingest documents into our work. So that might be a possibility there too, where we work directly with your lockbox providers and they can submit files directly into PaperSave without any user interaction there, right? So a lot of different options to get those documents into the system. Now, what I'm going to show you next, this is part of our automation. So you tend not to see this, right? This is more happening in the back end, but I want you to understand what our optical character recognition is going to do for us, right? So there's a couple of ways for us to build a batch. One, your batch naming convention is entirely up to you. If you have one that you currently use, numbering convention, we can continue to use that. When you click on auto generate, we're looking at RENXT, grabbing the next chronological batch order number, and then using that plus today's date as the batch number. But again, it's entirely up to you what you use for batch, right? If we use our dropdowns here, PaperSave does have the capability of using defaults, right? So you can build yourself different variations of defaults in PaperSave. really useful if you do sort your batches before you scan them in, right? So if you pre-sort your batches and you have a stack of contributions that they're all for the same fund campaign and appeal, you can create different repositories in PaperSave and basically tell PaperSave, these are the codes that I want you to automatically apply, right? Because those are the defaults that I want you to use. And you can have multiple variations of those defaults, right? But PaperSave can be a little bit more dynamic using our OCR and actually read the codes right from the documents that we're putting into the system, right? And that's ultimately what you'll see here. As these documents come in, and again, mind you, this is something that you do not see, all happens in the back end. But what happens is those documents get presented to our OCR engine, right? Our OCR engine is going to look for data on these contributions to help us populate as many of these fields as we can, right? If you look, these are the same fields that you have to enter every time that you key in a gift inside of the environment, right? So what we're doing is we're using that artificial intelligence in PaperSave to be able to read from the documents themselves to populate as many of these fields that we can for you, in essence, building that batch, right? So as these documents finish, we're going to populate as much of this data as we can. And actually there it goes for us, right? Now, this is an example of a contribution put through the system and the constituent doesn't exist, right? So what's going to happen is PaperSave is going to look to pull the rest of the information that it can, right? Like that basic information about that constituent. So what the amount is, what the dates are, right? So we're going to be able to pull that from the actual contribution. If you're scanning in your checks plus a reply device, and I'll show you that here in just a second, we can actually teach OCR to read from these reply devices if those reply devices include your codes, right? So we can expand on what OCR reads. And if you have scan lines, or even if you have checkboxes on your reply devices that tells us what that contribution is towards, we can expand on what OCR can read, and we can use the check plus that reply device to find as much information about that contribution to fill in as many of these fields that we can for you, right? And just like we mentioned, redaction happens automatically. So as these checks come in into the environment, we have the capabilities of making sure that your data is being redacted, right? You also do have manual redaction here in the event that maybe that constituent added some sensitive information like a social security number or something of the sort that you do not want to capture inside of an application, right? So you can always use redaction ad hoc and redact something that is needed right on the go, right? So again, a lot of different capabilities of us being able to bring codes, right? We can read them from a reply device. We can help read information right from a check itself. But again, all of this happens in the back end, right? PaperSave is going to look at all of that data, right? And the way that OCR works is that we're looking at this information on the check. We go into Blackbaud and match that constituent, right? Because we're literally reading the address from the contribution and going into your systems to match that, right? So that's ultimately how that works, right? We want to make sure that you are having that data up to date inside of your CRM, and PaperSave is always just going to reflect on that data, right? Again, all of this happens in the back end, right? We grab those from an email, we grab those from a scanner, we run through all of that OCR for you, and then at the end of that, right, which normally happens within seconds, as you saw, we place those documents inside of the workflow for you, right? This is where your gift processing team will now see those documents for the first time, okay? Now, who scans those? It could be entirely up to you, right? Depending on that business process. That could be the finance team that probably is opening up the mail, maybe depositing those checks and then scanning them into the system. Maybe it's the mailroom that is doing that, right? Just note that PaperSave users don't have to be Blackbaud users, right? So if there's another team opening up that mail, they will be able to scan that right into the system, right? And we do have email notifications that we can send out and alert the gift processor so they are aware that somebody just assigned them a batch. Okay, so just worth mentioning there. Now, what you see here is a couple of things. One, I mentioned I was an administrator and I get to see everything and everything inside of the environment. And that is exactly what you see here, right? I am an administrator, so I see that Tammy Bauer has a badge and I own a badge, right? In a normal world scenario, you will only see items that you own, right? So you don't get to see everybody's badge. You only get to see badges that have been assigned to you, right? With that said, our workflows are very flexible, right? So you can have multiple gift processors inside of our workflows, and everybody can own a batch, and not everybody's going to be stepping on each other's toes, right? So everybody owns a batch, everybody can process a batch, and that increases that productivity, right? It all depends on your needs there, right? But that administrator again will have the capabilities of seeing anything and everything that is out there. Okay. This column here shows you the name and number of that batch, right? So whatever you name that batch, you get to see that right here, right? As an administrator, you have full controls over that workflow. So you can make changes. So let's say Tammy is out of the office sick, right? And we have a batch that needs to get processed. You can actually select that batch that Tammy owns, right? We know she's out sick, right? We don't know when she's coming back. We can redirect that batch and assign that to somebody else who is in the environment, right? So now that batch has been reassigned, right? And that user potentially could get a notification letting them know that there's a batch waiting, right? Just know we do have out of offices. So you can have out of offices in PaperSave, and this will all happen automatically, right? You can assign ownership through out of offices as well. I'm going to process a batch. So I'm going to click on that first row. It's going to take me to that first gift there, right? So we get to review, get to see all of the data that our OCR captured or that we might have defaulted. Note that you could modify the document by adding more pages if you needed to, right? So you can always modify things right from where it sits. Again, if you have the right permissions, you do have annotations here that you can use. And also note that if we want to have a conversation internally about one of these contributions, we can always add a review step so that you can route this to a team member that maybe deals with this constituent, and they can give their input and you can receive that contribution right back and now enter that in the system a little bit more confidently, right? And all of that is being stored as part of an audit trail, right? So you can see who owned those documents, and as those documents are being changed or touched, we are building an audit trail for your users, right? Now, if this document is good and we want to create that batch, all you got to do is click submit. When you click submit, we're sending that item into Blackbaud, into your CRM to get that data entry started, right? You can see which batch you're working on, right? And you can do this on a onesie basis as you're reviewing them. You can click submit, and this item is gone. The next one comes up on the list. You do have toggles here that you can use to go on to the next one and come back to them if you like. Some clients like to review the whole batch, and once they reviewed that whole batch, they can select that whole batch and click submit, right? And that goes right into Blackbaud as a whole batch, right? You don't have to do these on a onesie basis. You have two batches that you reviewed. You can select multiple batches at once, click submit, and PaperSave will send that into Blackbaud and create multiple batches as long as they're labeled correctly. PaperSave can create multiple batches at once in the environment for you, okay? Now, new constituents, right? So this is new to PaperSave here, right? So what happens is if OCR doesn't find a constituent in the environment, we do have the capabilities of routing that to somebody who's in charge of creating or updating constituents in your system, right? That is just a vision that we had in the event that the person processing batches may not be the same person entering new constituents in the environment, right? So that is an option that you have there. You get to open up one of those items. You get to see the actual contribution. You get to see data that you can enter here, right? So you're basically going to give it the constituent name, last name, middle name, enter some address and phone number information, and then simply just click create, right? When you click create, we're now sending that constituent information to Blackbaud. So we're doing that data entry for you there. And what happens is we now create the constituent for you inside of Blackbaud, and we route right? Now we routed that document to the workflow. We basically given that document back to the gift processor so that they can enter that gift to that newly created constituent, right? So that's ultimately just a vision that we had. The same gift processor potentially could do it all if you wanted them to, but this is just again a vision that we had where there is divide in responsibilities there. We've now created that new constituent. You can select, submit, and this document goes and joins your batch inside of the system, right? So that's ultimately how that would work for you. We do the constituent data entry, and now we're able to associate a document right to that constituent. Rejections. So anything that we send over to Blackbaud that is not coded properly, it will be rejected by Blackbaud, right? So that is just the rules that we have to follow from the Blackbaud side, right? We want to make sure that we are sending things in the system that are valid, that we can actually create, right? So for example, you posted a batch, but there was an item sitting in the create a new constituent, and you now receive that and try to add it to that batch that was posted, is going to get rejected, right? Because that batch is posted. So ultimately, we will notify you of any rejections via email and also show you how to look at that audit trail so that you can identify what went wrong with that submission so you can make a correction and send that right back up to the system. Okay, so that is an option there. Now, from the moment that you click submit to the moment that that batch shows up in Blackbaud, right? We're talking about anywhere from, let's say, 20 seconds to 35 seconds, right? Really all depends on how big that batch is. As soon as you click submit, whether you're doing these on a onesie basis or whether you just send 20 batches up to the cloud, we're going to go ahead and start creating that as fast as Blackbaud allows us to, right? So ultimately, you'll get your batch there within seconds of you submitting that batch into the system. Notice that batch does come in unapproved. If you click on that batch, shows you all of those items inside of the batch. It does come in unapproved. We do that with efforts to making sure that you have a little bit of breathing room there. If you want to make any changes to your batch before they get approved or posted, you can do that right here. If not, just select all of those items, click approve, and now you're done, right? We are now all set with our batch processing. PaperSave did the data entry for you. You validated that batch inside of Blackbaud. You click approve. Now all of these documents are valid, right? So all of those checks that we used to read out of to help you build that batch inside of Blackbaud, they are actually all associated to each and every one of these records, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on Next Gen Data Systems here as an example, and I'm going to view the full record. We are now at a constituent level here, right? And again, I'm not sure if you've seen PaperSave inside of Blackbaud before, but as we mentioned at the beginning of the call, PaperSave is a native integration inside of the system, right? So when you add documents to any of those record types that we support, all you got to do is go to that record type, constituents. You'll see our tile with all of that documentation there, right? We talked about being able to index your documents. That's what that looks like, right? We're able to add multiple different repositories so that you can categorize the documents that you're storing inside of the system. If we scroll down, we see our givings history. Click on one of those donations that we just created. And basically, this is what comes from PaperSave, right? We're able to build that batch for you. We're able to run that batch through our OCR, making sure that we read out of those documents. At the end of that, you're going to be able to click submit. We create the batch inside of the environment for you, plus attach the document, right? So if you double click on that record, right, it takes you right into PaperSave so that you can see the documentation, right? You can see the document, you can see all of that metadata that we captured for you. Bottom left corner, you see your audit trails, right? So you get to see who that gift processor was, what time this document was created inside of the environment, right? Now, the document itself becomes searchable, right? We talked about searches earlier, and that's ultimately what you'll see here. Document becomes searchable. All of these fields here become searchable as well. So if I go into our home pages here, go into search, right? You literally can give PaperSave a single value, like a batch number, right? PaperSave grabs that information, takes it back into the system, and pulls all of that data that quickly, right? Imagine you having to go to drawers and pick up all of those documentations for a batch. It may take some time for you to do that. In PaperSave, that is within seconds, right? Select, you have all of your share capabilities here, right? You can email this to a user, email this to an auditor if you like to. You can copy a link and put that into like a Teams chat or Slack or whatever we use, right? You saw the audit trails, we can download all of that audit trail, right? If we go into advanced, this is where we can now build ourselves a query, right? We can use and then or filtering, add conditions, and you can do something, for example, as gift date is less than today, gift date is greater than the beginning of the year, and I only want to see gifts of a certain dollar amount, right? So how about greater than $300, right? For example, click on search. PaperSave uses that criteria to go back into the system and pull all of that data for you. Select, again, you have all of that share options there, plus download all of that audit trail, and you can also export that data to Excel, which is great for auditing purposes, for reporting to management, right? You get that data put right into Excel for you. And really what I like about this function is that PaperSave is gonna grab all of that coding that exists in our workflows, and it's gonna put that for you in Excel, right? So if you scroll to the right here, you get to see all of that gift split information, all of that coding. But hey, you want to see the document? That is what column B here is for. You click on one of those links, and that'll take you right into PaperSave so that you can see those documents firsthand, right? So again, easy searchability, easy retrieval of those documents as we're processing them in the system. Now, you want to get a little bit of a personalized demo, please feel free to reach out to our team members.